Next, let's join Fritz from My World 2 in Papillion, Nebraska, as he chats with a visionary electric vehicle expert who has been ahead of the EV revolution for decades.
The whole thing actually began with a bicycle. I went to the local bank here in Papillion, and I was waiting to talk to one of the officers, and I opened up Business Week magazine, and there's a 2-page spread for an electric bicycle. And I thought, what the heck is this doing in Business Week magazine? And so as I got to digging deeper, I thought, I got to find out about this. So I left the bank, rushed down to the city library, and spent the next couple hours cruising the internet trying to figure out what all this electric vehicle stuff was all about. And that was the origin of EV World.
So that was almost 20 years ago?
That was the summer of 1997.
And I look around, I see several electric vehicles, the bikes.
Yep.
The lawnmower, the skateboard.
Yep.
You're kind of living the EV lifestyle.
I am living the EV life. I made a pledge. It took time. It didn't happen in 1998. It didn't happen in 2000. But eventually, I made a pledge. I will not use gasoline, petroleum products any longer if I possibly can. Now, of course, I've got a Prius. That still uses gasoline. But the car that we use almost inevitably, all the time, is the all-electric Fiat 500, which I've had for about 3 years now.
Now, you were involved in the early days, but now every automotive company is basically making this their core focus.
It is so exciting. Every one of them is making that pledge. They're starting to now say, we're not even going to build internal combustion engines before the end of the decade or shortly thereafter. That's really exciting because now we're starting to see the progression of, when I called it EV World, what I'd hoped we'd finally get to. We're now starting to see television ads for electric cars.
The Super Bowl was dominated by that.
Yeah, Super Bowl dominated. Regular nightly television now is covering that. I was 20 years ahead of my time. I thought this was going to happen 20 years ago. So my timing wasn't exactly perfect, but
we both added a few years in that regard.
I've lived long enough to be able to finally see it happening, yeah. I would love to have all my neighbors around here having one of these babies parked in the garage. But will that transformer in my backyard handle all those cars? What if everybody comes in here at 5:30 at night and they plug their cars in to begin charging? What happens to the power? Can we handle that?
So Bill, with the rate of vehicle adoption rising so dramatically, what needs to happen with infrastructure to more or less prepare for the next level?
Well, obviously an electric vehicle of any kind, be it my bicycles, be it the skateboard, be it my electric car, is where does that electricity come from? What is the energy source that generates that power, right? And so for some sections of the country and globally, that comes from fossil fuels. Critics that say, well, electric cars are only, as clean as the power source, that's right. But what's happening is that power source is increasingly becoming cleaner as we start to idle coal plants. I think something like this year, there's something like 12 coal-powered plants are going to be idled. Being replaced, of course, in some cases by natural gas, but eventually those are being replaced by solar, those are being replaced by wind, particularly wind in this area. There is what's called the Southwest Power Pool, which is a collection of utilities, basically from the Texas border to the Canadian border, from the Missouri River west to the Colorado Rockies. There are times on that pool, like for example yesterday, when over 60% of the electric power being generated within that pool was coming from wind. So I monitor that. I take and plug this car in because I'm getting at least half or more of my power is coming now from wind and not from natural gas or not from coal or not even from nuclear. I mean, coal is now one of the most expensive forms of power that you can have now. So they're going to take the bids from the wind turbine, from the wind farms, because it's just cheaper. So the grid's becoming progressively cleaner and greener. So we're getting there, and this is on a global basis. Even Saudi Arabia, just one of the biggest sources, not the biggest source of fossil fuels, are beginning now to install and build solar farms. Because what do they have? Sun. Lots and lots of sun.
And Bill, if you would just explain a little bit about lithium and the key role it plays and how it works.
So the advantage of lithium over, let's say, the normal lead acid battery that you'd find in the starter battery in your car, for example. It just has this wonderful ability to be recharged many times and hold much more energy, which is why that's what we're using in our phones. You remember back when a mobile phone used to be a brick? Well, that was the reason for that was partial electronics, but also because of the battery they had to use. There are studies and concerns that are being raised about, do we have enough lithium? In fact, I saw one study says that we're good at this point till like the end of the decade, and then we're going to have some issues providing enough lithium to meet all the demand. And the thing about lithium is that lithium is a renewable resource. Unlike extracting coal or extracting natural gas out of the earth, those once you burn them, that's it. They're gone. Lithium that's in the batteries in this car can be pulled out, can be recycled, and then put into new batteries. So it's not a resource that is consumed and it's gone. It's a resource that we can use over and over and over again.
Bill, well, thank you for having us up here. It's been great talking with you. I'm so excited about what's coming up with the future, but I'd like to hear a little bit about what you think the next 10 year brings.
Wow. Let me go in the other room and get my crystal ball. We spent the last century building a society around these to fit their needs. We need to begin to think about how do we restructure that society so it is less dependent on these and more dependent on things like these. You know, I've been writing about electric vehicles for 20 years. It took me nearly 20 years to finally get one of these, right? So things like that don't happen overnight, but it's a goal.